Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and the video that you're about to see is a video that I made for another website. They asked me to create a special video just for them, and now I want to share it with you. Some of you guys who already picked up the FroKnowsPhoto Beginner Guide are going to recognize this photo shoot. It's a photo shoot that I did in a park on a playground with a kid. I believe he was 6 at the time, and I was using a Nikon D3100 and 70-300 VR, so a pretty basic setup. So what we're going to do, you're going to see in the video that I run down all of the, well, it's a lot of photos, not all of them, but I don't just show you the best and the keepers, I show you ones that maybe missed or why they missed, and I explain to you in detail all of the information behind these photos, how I captured it, what I could have done to do better, and so it's going to be a pretty good detailed video for you to watch. If you are interested in picking up the FroKnowsPhoto Beginner Guide, it is currently on sale right now, and that sale is going to end on October 31st. It will include this photo shoot as well as 3 other photo shoots, but you can get all the information down below. And don't forget, there is a contest going on to give away a Nikon D600 or a Canon 6D. You can see all of that information at the link below here on YouTube or on FroKnowsPhoto.com/contest. But let's get you right into the video and enjoy it. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is an exclusive video for you guys at Digital Photography School. And what it is, I'm going to go through a photo shoot that I did not too long ago with very basic gear, a Nikon D3100 and a 70-300 zoom, photographing a kid playing in the park. What I'm going to try and do is show you some of the keepers as well as some of the images that may not have quite made it. But I'm going to talk about focusing modes, how I got my settings right, pretty much how I did the whole thing in manual without being in auto. Because I think it's really important to jump out of those auto settings and get into manual and unlock the power of what your digital SLR can give you. Because I think that you have the ability to switch over into manual without a problem and get it pretty quick. So let's take a look at some of these images. Now what you're seeing here is not really a keeper. Now a shot like this is good to get a basic starting point. As you can see, my settings are pretty close. Let me switch over to the settings tab. Develop here, and we can see 1/320th of a second at 4.5, ISO 800. Okay, there we go. Right off the bat, I'm not afraid to get into ISO 800 even in the basic beginner camera. 800 ISO outside is going to be perfectly fine. The reason I started with a higher ISO is because kids like to run around. And when kids run around, you need to have a faster shutter speed to freeze their motion, because slower shutter speeds, they're going to blur, and then that image may not be usable. So here we go. Focus mode on something like this would be either continuous or single, but I'll get to that as we move forward. But yeah, this is not a keeper shot. Now the composition isn't bad, but there's no connection with the camera. His eyes are not looking at me, which makes that not a keeper. Now this shot, I wouldn't call it a keeper either, because I cut his hands off. You know, he's moving quickly. I've got to anticipate what's going on. I'm probably in continuous focus, trying to focus right here on his eye. And that's sharp. You can see that's tack sharp, 1/1000th of a second at 4.8. So what I'm doing here is I'm shooting in manual. I'm in manual. I'm setting my settings because I know the light isn't going to change very much in the couple of minutes, maybe the 15-20 minutes that we're actually doing a photo shoot. So once you get that locked in, then you can really concentrate on just shooting. But keep in mind, if the light changes even a little bit, you just need to figure out what to do. And what I like to change most, I like to play with the shutter speed, because that's the easiest thing to change quickly. So the sun blocks out a cloud blocks out the sun, what happens? There's not as much light. So if you were at 1,000th of a second, what do you think you need to do because there's not as much light out there? You need to let more light in. So to do that, the quickest thing you can change with the back thumb on every digital SLR is change your shutter speed. Make it slower. The slower the shutter speed, the more light you're gonna let in, so that you're compensating for those clouds blocking the sun. So let's try to move through this a little quicker. This isn't a keeper, just bad composition, but everything else is on. But that is better. Now this still may not be the greatest shot in the world because his eyes aren't making connection with me, but look at the composition. The difference between this one, where it's too tight, I cut off some of his arm over here, and I cut off all his hands, definitely not a good one. But then I recomposed got everything locked on. Let's see, shutter speeds 1,000th of a second. I let more light in here at 500th of a second, and I pulled back on the zoom a little bit. And this is a composition that, you know, if you got a picture of your kids running around out there, would be a great shot on a jungle gym. This one's a little, you know, I went black and white with it, a little more eye contact, cut his foot off. Not my fault because he dropped it as I was shooting, but just showing you some examples here. You're going to see as the photo shoot goes on, the subject gets more and more comfortable with me photographing, which means that, you know, I'm able to get better pictures, because he was running away from me the whole time when I first started. Wouldn't let me, you know, lock anything in. He was just moving too quick. But that happens as you get more comfortable. Even, you know, so if it's your child, the same thing may happen. But if you're just hanging out and shooting and interacting and letting them do their thing, you have a better chance of them calming down and starting to pose for you. And you're going to see that as we move on. Here he is laying at the bottom of the slide. So I locked in on single focus right on his eyes, and what you can see is I dropped a 200th of a second. The reason being is he's not moving at the bottom of the slide. He's stuck there. So because he's not moving, I don't need that really extreme fast shutter speed, and being in single focus, locking in right on the eye, you can see how tack sharp this is. Again, using a Nikon D3100 with a 70-300 basic lens. It's a good lens. It's a good lens. It's not the top of the line. It's not the most expensive thing out there. So this is a pretty basic setup, and you could do this with a 55-200, a 55-300, even a kit lens 18-55. You can do a lot of this stuff. So moving forward, now you see that I missed my focus. I couldn't get it locked in. It was focusing in here on the bars. So something that you could do is you could try to zoom in a little bit while he's sitting there and get the focus point between the bars. Now I missed it here, and I wanted to show you that it's missed. The composition would have been good, but I missed it. I missed that focus. So here we go. Look at something like this. My settings have been pretty consistent all along, between 1/500th, 1,000th of a second. You know, we're looking at one-stop changes, but now that he's calmed down, look at this shot. Doing it in manual exposure allows me to just focus on. Here, I'm going to turn over here. Doing it in manual exposure allows me to focus in on capturing the moment and not worrying as much about tweaking those settings. I don't tweak the white balance. I'm shooting raw so that I can tweak that later in Lightroom or whatever I'm using, because white balance is so easy to tweak. What I'm trying to get across is if you capture the composition and the exposure pretty darn close in the camera, you're saving yourselves a lot of time after the fact. And on top of that, by getting your settings locked in manual, they're not jumping all over the place and being thrown off by the background, like the bright light in the sky throwing your shutter speed off. In this case, in manual, you're able to lock it in where you know it's going to be right and just make subtle tweaks here and there as the light changes. That's what's allowing me to get pictures like this, because now Logan, that's who the subject is starting to pose for the camera. This composition is right on. He's resting right here on the jungle gym. The composition, you know, I left a little bit of room to the sides. That would crop well if you wanted to do an 8x10, because a lot of people like printing 8x10, so this leaves enough room for that. And he's framed here by the metal bars. So framing is a great form of composition. Moving forward, he's just doing more and more. Again, went from 500th of a second to 1,000th of a second as the light was changing. It got brighter. So because it got brighter, I had to speed my shutter speed back up to compensate, to cut back on the amount of light going in. So this is a cool shot. This is one of the cooler shots. You know, he's just leaning there. The composition is spot on. I'm in single focus mode, so not continuous, because he's not moving. I'm locking in right on his eye. I need to move through these quicker because I keep talking a lot. Just moving through more. Oh, I love that, because he's sneaking up out from underneath the jungle gym, just posing for me. And again, because I'm in manual exposure, my exposure is again between 1/500th and 1,000th, just small subtle changes, because I'm getting the exposure right. If I let the camera do this, it may make a mistake. It may try to expose for this bright sun, which then what would happen is this is what would happen if it was exposing for this highlight area in his face. But because I have it set myself, this is the exposure I ended up getting. You can see how tack sharp that is. I even like this. I keep coming in tighter and tighter. You end up with shots like this, kids just playing around. They're good for the parents. They're good for you guys out there because it shows you the personality of the kid. Again, look at this composition. This is rule of thirds, throwing him off to the right-hand side of the frame. I don't mind that these highlights are blown out. Again, the focus is here right on Logan. You can see that he's sharp and he's sneaking out there. That's a good black and white. Playing on the same thing here, rule of thirds and framing. Using this jungle gym to frame him and draw your eyes into it is a cool winning type thing. This is an okay shot. I don't think it's the best one, but I liked it. Now he's starting to pose for me. Switch to vertical. Don't forget to switch into verticals. A lot of people get stuck in horizontal the whole time. Yeah, I say horizontal instead of horizontal. It's okay. A lot of people get stuck doing this, and I feel that, you know, don't forget to go vertical. And again, in something like this, I am doing single focus right on him. My exposure, again, in the same place as it was before, so you can see that it's been pretty consistent. Look at the composition here. Look how I didn't cut his arm off either way. And what I like to do, I don't like to crop post-production. I feel it saves you a lot of time. If you can get it right in the camera and not crop, what I like to do is I may take a really tight shot zoomed all the way out. Or a lot of people say they like to take wide shots and then crop later. But if you're making enlargements and you're making a lot of changes, you know, cropping, you can run into issues with noise and grain, which many of you may see in your images. One way to get rid of that without any post-processing is not to crop at all. So what I like to do is I may start wide and take a full body shot, but then I'll zoom in and get a tighter shot, fill it from the knees on up. Then I may come in even tighter and get a headshot. So I'm giving myself all of these other angles to choose from without having to worry about cropping later, so that I can maintain those raw files and all of the data that's there for me. Love this shot. This is one of my favorite shots of the whole photo shoot. He's being framed by his arm is up here. He's being framed by the jungle gym, and look at the tack sharpness of his eye. Look how sharp this is. I dropped my shutter speed. Why did I drop my shutter speed in a situation like this? Because he's in a shadow area. The sun is no longer hitting his face. So what I had to do was know this, that okay, he went from a bright area, into a shadow area. So now that there's not as much light, what do I need to do? Well, when there's not as much light, we need to slow the shutter speed down to let in more light to compensate for that. That's exactly what I did here. You can see that by going from where were we outside? We were at 1/800th of a second in bright daylight, dropped it a couple clicks, a couple stops to 1/200th of a second, and this is a spot on exposure, spot on composition, spot on just sharpness. This is something that you guys can do, and I'm showing you with the very basic gear that you can do this. You can get out there and shoot these awesome pictures of your kids, you know, just with some practice. And I know I've got a bunch of I got a good video to make you guys for the next week that's going to be exclusive to you guys. I'm going to make that video, and I'm going to show you how it can really help you get the right exposure. So here, I'll keep moving through. I love this picture too. Using this out of focus area to draw me in. I can still blow out the background, guys, at 5.6. You can get that beautiful buttery bokeh, but look at how sharp he is focused right here. I love that. Moving through. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the composition. Here's the wide shot and not cropping. Wide shot, moving in, tighter, filling the frame, but we don't have to crop this to get to this where you would lose quality. Moving on to here, be careful with elbows reaching too close to the edge. I'm a fan of not cutting this stuff off. That's a little close for my comfort, but just something to keep in mind. Much better. The framing and composition's right on. Here you go again, coming in tighter, filling the frame with him. He's in the whole frame, nothing's getting cut off, even better. You're gonna pick up weird shots like this. Not a keeper, but maybe fun just to have. And don't forget, guys, don't forget about other things that may be going on a playground. You have your kids' shoes, you have their hands, you have their feet, you have different things going on, different elements that make for interesting photos. Not just the subject, the main subject all the time. Don't forget to look behind you. What's going on? Are there pictures of your kids' shoes? Are there pictures of their hands? Maybe your son and daughter holding hands on the playground as they're running away, and you're able to capture just their hands in focus. That's something to keep in mind when you talk about, you know, the mentality of making quality images. And then again, 1/500th of a second exposed right here. Great composition, framed by all of these poles and all of that good stuff to give you an awesome shot just like this that's tack sharp, with a very basic setup of a Nikon D3100 with a 70-300 zoom lens. As you saw in this video, you could, or in these photos, you can not only blow out the background, which so many people want to get that awesome bokeh in the background, you can do it with any lens. It doesn't have to be the most expensive thing in the world. I'm showing you right here with basic gear that you can do it. You can get tack sharp images, you can get great composition, you can even shoot at a higher ISO with a basic camera and not worry about noise or grain. One, because we're not cropping. So just keep those mentalities in mind. I know it's a long video, but I'll be back next week with another killer video on how you can get your exposures close within 3 shots or right on. It's a great tip. I think you're going to like it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya. Are you subscribed yet on the YouTube channel? Well, click this subscribe button right here. Also click this box if you want to be emailed every time I upload a new video so you can get the latest video uploads as they happen. And also, if you haven't signed up for the free user's guide, sign up right here. Put your name, email address in here, hit send it. You will get a free ebook sent to your email, as well as a link to a 60-minute long video on flash photography in the studio that Adam and I created. So please do that, and we'll see you.